Well, hello everyone, and welcome. Today, oops, here we go. All right, sorry about that. Welcome. Good to have you guys with me today again. And today we going to wrap up our semester in electrical class, chapter 27 and 28. We're going to give most of our attention today to chapter 27, which is airbag and pre-tensioner circuit. So this is a safety situation here. Safety in the fact of safety working on the cars, and then obviously it's safety when we're driving the vehicles. So I am in my garage today, and noisy truck just went by. I don't know if you heard that or not, but that's just it's a nice day though when I'm in the garage trying to make this video for you guys. So maybe a little bit of a distraction there sometimes, but like usual, this is just going to be uncut and unedited, and just kind of like we would be in the classroom. And we're talking about airbags today, pre-tensioners. Chapter 28 is on audio systems, and if you want to look at chapter 28 and just go ahead and do that at your own discretion there. I'm not going to ask for any work on chapter 28. We're going to do all of our attention, place all of our attention on chapter 27 today. So I'm planning about 4 videos today on airbags. First one is just going to be an overview of chapter 27. You have this in your notes on Moodle here. So 4 videos today with this lesson and the related documents that go with it. So we're going to be looking at chapter 27. We're going to just do an overview of chapter 27. I'll interject some things, extra to the chapter, but the author of the book does a good job there on chapter 27. It's a lot of good information. Okay. Also going to look at the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration website. I have that there in your notes, and I have that pulled up on my laptop here. We'll talk about that a little bit. A lot of good information there about airbags and so forth, recalls and all that kind of stuff. All right. Then we are going to do task sheet number 86. Okay. So 86, task sheet 86 is on Moodle for you. We're going to do task sheet 86. We're going to do that just together, okay, on the video, along with, you'll need the wiring diagram that goes with it, but it's on Moodle also too. So we'll just fill that out together, talk about that some, look at how that wiring diagram looks, and some other information there that's not in the book here and so forth, okay. So that'll be video number 2. Video number 3, we're going to look at some of these components that we're talking about, airbag components. Okay, this is a clock spring here, they typically call it. Then I have a table full of parts right here too, that we'll make a separate video on that. Talk about the parts, show you the difference between a single stage and a dual stage airbag, things like that. We'll look at some of the tools that we need to use, show you how to disengage the driver airbag from the steering wheel, at least this one particular type, things like that. And then, so that'll be fun. And then lastly, we're going to do some airbag deployments, okay? So I've got tools here and parts here, and we want to deploy some airbags safely and show you how to do that. Typically, I know in the dealership, you have to, well, anytime you dispose of an airbag, you're supposed to deploy it first, okay? You don't want to put a live airbag in the trash, just because it might deploy, okay? Might accidentally deploy and injure somebody. So those things have to be taken care of before you put them in the trash and in a safe manner. So that's kind of the plan for today. I'm going to break this up in at least 4 sections, okay? So yeah, you might get something to drink, maybe some popcorn or whatever, and get your worksheets out and so forth. If you have the laptop handy and want to look at this website here with me in a minute, we can do that too. Okay, so chapter 27, We're on page 434, where it starts at 435, all right? Airbags and pre-tensioners. So, starts out talking about seat belts and seat belt retractors. So, we've had seat belts for a long time, of course, and they're our primary source of restraint in the vehicle, okay? We use that word restraint. A lot of times the airbag systems are called SRS systems for supplemental restraint systems, okay? So it's all about restraint in the sense of keeping our body in the seat, you know, in place and not moving around in the vehicle, or heaven forbid that we fly out of the vehicle in a crash. You may have seen some of those videos where they do that, where people don't have seat belts on and stuff, and the car gets in a crash and is rolling or something like that, and it's quite dramatic to see the dummies come flying out of the car, right? So we want to avoid that, right? So the seat belt's been around for a long time, so that's our primary source of restraint in the vehicle and in a collision, okay? So the airbags are designed to be a supplement to that, okay? They're not the primary source. So if you do not have the seat belt on and are in an accident, the airbags will help, but that's all. I mean, they're not going to restrain you like the seat belt does, okay? So just a word about that. All right, so on page 435, he starts talking about seat belts, and he mentions 3 different types of collisions there, okay? So that's interesting to know. Collision number 1, the vehicle strikes another vehicle or an object, right? The driver and or passenger hits objects inside the vehicle if unbelted, that is again. Could hit each other, hit the dash. You know, that dash is a very rigid part of the, and it's a structural part of the car, so you don't want to come forward and hit the dash. That makes me think about some of those people that I see in the passenger seat sometimes, you know, with their feet up on the dash while they're riding in the car, right? Not a good idea. It's not a good idea to have your feet on the dash while you're riding in the car. I mean, just what if, right? You're in an accident and it folds up a little bit and it crushes you with your feet up. That's not a good idea. We want our feet to be down on the floor. I know it may be comfortable for some people, but it's not a very safe position to be in when riding in the car. Matter of fact, many cars have what they call knee bolster airbags. So they're underneath the dash, that come out underneath the dash like that to protect your knees and your legs in a crash. So if your legs are on top of that, that's going to be a real painful thing. It really is. So again, it may be comfortable, and you may want to show everybody your toenails or something like that, you know. But that's not a good idea. It's not safe to have your legs, feet up on the dash when you're riding. Okay, sorry I got off on that there, but anyway, it made me think about it, right? Okay, so collision number 3 is something we don't think about sometimes, right? It says internal organs to the body, all right, that hit each other, other organs or bones, and cause internal injury. Wow, that's kind of an interesting concept, that a collision on the inside of the body, right? Things moving around. So we want to try to avoid that, eliminate that, mitigate that. That's the current word these days, mitigate something, right? So safety belts help in all of those areas. Okay, he's got a really good illustration there on top of the page, 27.1, and he tells us there that the seat belt is designed to actually stretch a little bit in an impact. Okay, might not have thought about that before, but that 2-inch webbing there is quite strong. It's very strong webbing, and but it will stretch a little bit, especially if you got a 230-pound guy sitting there and you're moving. All right. So he talks about hitting an impact there, or hitting something and stopping the car at 30 miles an hour in 1 foot. Right? You're moving along, you hit something solid, and you go from 30 to 0 in 1 foot. So that's a pretty solid impact there. So that's a of a 160-pound driver, that's a force of 4,800 pounds. Wow. In the brake class, we talk about mass times velocity squared over 29.9 and the kinetic energy that's developed in the moving object. Okay, but so that's what they're applying there. Okay, so we have a mass in motion and it stops all of a sudden. There's some energy that gets released there. Okay, that seat belt's designed to absorb that energy, being you trying to move toward the steering wheel. Okay, speaking of steering wheel, you know, there's another safety device in the steering wheels now besides the airbag, and that's a collapsible steering column. Okay, so that's not part of this lesson here, but the steering wheel column itself will collapse in a collision. It'll collapse either this way or this way. Coming, you know, if it's severe enough, the steering column is made in sections that slide together in 2 or 3 different sections that will collapse. And thank goodness we don't need a rigid shaft right there in front of us that could harm us. So yeah, so there's that too. So then he shows in figure B there, top of the page, that it stretches about 6 inches maybe there. Okay, and it's like goes from like 30 G's to 20 G's of force there. That's cool. That's a lot of force, right? So we're stopping at 30 miles an hour. It moves about a foot, you know, and then it moves another half a foot. It says that seat belt stretches. Okay, so yeah. So we're going to learn a bit more about pretensioners because they're connected to this seat belt. All right, this seat belt has a device on it that's going to cinch that seat belt even tighter to keep us from moving that 1 foot. Okay, and it's going to keep us tight in the seat. So if we're in a severe enough collision, there are a lot of things that are going to happen there. A lot of devices in play and a lot of safety features that come to our aid in case of an accident. So that's pretty cool. Pretty cool. All right, safety belts. Seat belt retractors, he talks about that a little bit. He's got a good little diagram there, or a picture there of how a seat belt retractor works and how it locks up. Got a little pendulum there. There's a good picture of that there. I won't go into detail there. You can see how that works there. Okay. Seat belt lights and chimes. Obviously we have seat belt reminders. Okay. And some of us may not like those things. We might not like to put seat belts on, but you know, those things are there to remind us to connect the seat belts. Those seat belt chimes are a lot harder to bypass these days because we talked about before. That chime comes out of the radio nowadays on most cars. It's not a separate little buzzer down there like it used to be. The tone is generated by the radio, comes out of the speakers, and so, you know, you can take the speaker out the door maybe if you wanted to, so it would chime, but then you don't have the music coming out of that speaker either, so, you know, yeah, just buckle your seat belt, okay? Now obviously airbag lights and so forth are on the dashes too. So then he talks about pretensioners there. He says a pretensioner is an explosive or pyrotechnic device that is part of the seatbelt retractor assembly. It can be part of the seatbelt retractor or it can be part of the seatbelt buckle or both, okay? It can be part of both, but either one or both nowadays, all right? So the retractor itself can have a device that goes off that pulls it tight and pulls the buckle side tight too, okay? So, yeah, there's a lot of things that can be happening there, all right? The purpose of the pretensioner device is to force the occupant back into position against the seat back and to remove any slack in the seat belt. And we're going to deploy one of those here a little bit later on in the other video. You can kind of see how that works and so forth. Okay? So the caution there says seatbelt pretensioner assemblies must be replaced in the event of an airbag deployment. Always follow the manufacturer's recommended service procedure. That's in red on purpose, okay guys? I knew I was going to need some water today with this. All right. Pretensioners are explosive devices that could be ignited if voltage is applied to the terminals. Do not use a jumper wire, powered test light, around a seat belt latch wiring. Always follow vehicle manufacturer recommendations. Okay, so we're going to talk about that quite a bit as we go through each video about safety regulations. So self-powered test light, we don't want to use those at all in testing airbags. No, that's out. Okay, it takes very little voltage really to set off an airbag. Matter of fact, they caution you not to even touch the terminals on the bag itself with your finger, right? Because the static electricity could make it go off. So we want to be very careful around these things. We want to respect the power that's in them because quite a bit of power there. Okay, so if you have your laptop open or your computer open, you want to look at the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. All right, it's I've got the website there for you, nhtsa.gov. You go to that deal at the very top of the page. It talks about Takata airbag recall. Now we've probably all heard about Takata by now, right? All right, you click on that, and it's really the very opening sentence there is sad. Okay, it says overview: tens of millions of vehicles with Takata airbags are under recall. Wow. Tens of millions of vehicles are under recall. Yeah. So when I was in the dealership, that was a moneymaker for us. I just had to be honest about it. There's a lot of vehicles that General Motors has that uses Takata airbags, and we did a lot of recalls. And those recalls vary from model to model, and sometimes you replace the airbag in the steering wheel, just replace it. Sometimes you took that airbag off, you put a little pad underneath it, excuse me, so that the wiring didn't get pinched. Okay. Sometimes you took the passenger airbag out and you took the inflator module out of it, took the whole thing out, and then you took the inflator part. I always called it the stick of dynamite because it was a cylinder, you know, but that was the part with the explosive in it. The bag was still good. Okay, you put a different piece of dynamite in it. I'm sorry, I'm just saying. You put a different inflator in it. Okay, yeah. And so some of them were like that. Okay, some of them involved taking the whole top of the dash off, right? Taking that off, putting a different air, because in some of them, that passenger airbag is attached directly to the bottom of the dash. You know, so then that dash looks smooth all across it, right? So some of them are directly underneath that dash on the passenger side, right above the glove box, right where you might have your feet at, right? We talked about a while ago. Don't put your feet there, all right? That airbag is right there, all right? I'm going to break both your ankles. Sorry, okay. You get the point. So, anyway, some of them are like that. So sometimes you had to replace that whole dash top and that airbag, a whole new thing. Inflator, bag, and all. Okay? So there were just several different procedures that we did depending on the model of the car or the truck or whatever it was. Okay? That they figured all that out through their testing and so forth. But yeah, we're talking about tens of millions of vehicles. And there's still a lot of them out there, excuse me, that haven't been done yet. So what you can do on this website though is you can check your car, right? You go back to the home page, and there's a deal that says Save Cars, Save Lives, right? And then you can check on your vehicle safety record and so forth there. Just type in like 2003 Jeep, right? And it came up a while ago, said there had been 4 recalls on it. I checked it a while ago. You can also look at car seats, and you can also look at tires. Those are both very important safety features. Car seats are a big thing, you know. So, safety-wise with kids, where to place them at, right? We don't put them in the front seat and turn them around backwards, right? Lord help us. They learned the hard way not to put a car seat in the passenger front seat and turn it around backwards. Why? Because when that passenger airbag went off, it came out and hit that car seat. Right? You get in the picture here, right? Be very careful. Know that that thing can go off in an accident and cause some damage. I have a passenger airbag here that in the last video I'm going to deploy. All right, and it'll make a believer out of you then. All right, okay. I'll try to stay off that soapbox, but we're talking about safety here. Okay. All right, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA.gov. All right, a lot of good information there. You can spend quite a bit of time on, but I just want to make sure you guys knew about that. And you can type your own vehicle in there and search it and see what it says. All right, moving on. Front airbags. Airbags are passive restraints. Passive, right? That means that they automatically go off. You don't have to do anything. That's what that means. Therefore, passive means that it does it itself. Okay? You don't have to buckle the seatbelt. You don't have to plug in the airbag. Okay? I mean, you have to plug in the seatbelt. Sorry, that's active. Sorry. Passive means you don't have to do anything. You turn the car on, start it. If the airbag light goes out, it's ready to go. Okay, so it's passive. You don't have to do anything. It's a passive system. It's always ready to go when the car is running. Okay, and they call them different names: supplemental restraint system, supplemental inflatable restraints, supplemental air restraints. So it could be SRS, SIR, SAR. Term I'm familiar with there, General Motors uses most of the time, is supplemental inflatable restraint. Number 2 there, SIR. That's what GM calls most of them, but it's still, the key word there is supplemental again, right? And the fact that it's passive, okay? As long as the light's not on, the system's going to work in an accident, okay? All right. So then it shows a picture there in 27.5 on page 437 of a little bit about that angle of impact that this thing's going to work at. Okay, so this is just talking about the front of the car though. All right, front of the car is about 30 degrees right of center, 30 degrees left of center. That's a fairly standard setup there. Some of them may be a little different. You never can nowadays. Engineers and stuff design the vehicles in different ways, but that's a pretty standard idea of that view or that window of operation that the system's going to work at in a frontal impact. Okay, but nowadays we have side impact sensors too. So if somebody hits you right at the driver's door, there's a sensor in that door that's going to sense that, and it's going to deploy that airbag that's in your seat back. Okay, and it may deploy that airbag that's in the roof rail, they call it. Okay, so there's airbags in the roof, in the seat. Sometimes the seat has one on both sides. Sometimes it's just, if it has one at all, it's going to be on this outer side of the seat. Okay, and so the systems have gotten a lot smarter these days, and so depending on where the car gets hit and what happens, it only really deploys the airbags that it needs. Okay, because it even knows if somebody's sitting in the passenger seat or not, right? So things like that. Obviously there's a driver in the car or it wouldn't be moving, but so they've gotten a lot smarter and a lot more technical these days with 2 stages and multiple devices on the vehicle. So usually they're only going to deploy as needed. All right. Okay. So a little bit about that. He talks about some of the parts involved there. We're going to look at these parts here on the bench here in another video. But they got different, we do have sensors, the airbags, clock springs. Here's an example of a clock spring here. We'll take a closer look at that. Control module, I've got a control module to look at. Wiring and connectors, we got plenty of that. All right, so figure 27.6, he calls this a simplified airbag deployment circuit. And I really like this circuit though. It shows you really what's happening. Okay, in all the things we've talked about electrical wise, right, we've talked about the fact that it only takes 2 things for a load to work, right? Power and ground. Well, in this case, our load, if you will, is an airbag, all right, or a pretensioner, some type of deployment device, pyrotechnic device, all right? So it's very good. So you look at this here, and there's an arming sensor on the top. Notice it says ignition power B+, right? So it goes through that sensor there. All right, there's a switch there. That sensor closes, or that switch closes in an impact. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And then so it supplies the power side to that inflator, to the inflator itself. All right. So again, the airbag is made up of at least two parts. There's the bag itself, and then there's some type of squib, they call it there, all right, or inflator that has a chemical in it that's going to ignite and cause the gas to come out. All right. So it goes through that coil. It's our coil or clock spring, right? We'll talk more about that when we talk about the parts. Goes through that, through the squib, back through the coil, and then the passenger compartment discriminating sensor, or the way this is wired here, the forward discriminating sensor. Either one of those two sensors there will complete the ground circuit. You see that ground in the middle? Okay? See the ground in the middle right there? So either one of those that trigger, okay, or both of them, will complete the ground. So we have power on one side, ground on the other side, boom in the middle, right? Boom in the middle. Now these things are awful loud, use that word boom, but I'm told in a crash though, the sound of the crash is so loud and it's happening so quick that you don't really hear it. You don't know the difference there. Yeah, there's such a lot of noise going on and a lot of sound happening there, but they do make quite a bit of noise. Okay, so that is a real good picture there to see how that works. So all of them are like that. So what we call that though then is a deployment loop. Okay, that's a key word there, a key term there, and we're going to use that term a lot. This is a deployment loop. All right, typically that's going to come out of the SDM through that coil or whatever it takes to get to that airbag, okay, and then back. So it's a loop. It goes out through the airbag and back, all right? And so that control module is constantly checking that deployment loop, okay? We call that deployment loop because that's the loop that's going to deploy, all right? It's going to connect everything together. And so it's constantly looking at that, it's checking to see if there's continuity in that loop. And it knows that there should be a specific amount of resistance in that loop, okay? And the resistance is based on that inflator, that squib. You see that squared line in there, this square line like this, in that inflator module? There's going to be a certain amount of resistance there. And I know on General Motors cars, and I think most all of them the same, it's somewhere around 2.5 ohms, okay? So it's a small amount of resistance, but it's very specific. It's a very narrow window of operation there that module is looking for. I know a lot of them, if it gets about 3.2, 3.3 ohms, it turns a light on. It says there's high resistance. Okay, if it gets below 2 ohms, it turns a light on and says there's too little resistance. Okay, so it's usually right around 2.5 to 3 ohms in there that these things operate on. And that's the whole loop. That counts all the connectors in between there that it has to have to get to the airbag and back to the module. So it's a deployment loop, okay? Keyword to know there. That's a good picture of that there, other than the fact that they don't show you the module there, okay? The module nowadays is what's controlling that, both sides of that. The module nowadays controls that positive side and the negative side, but this is still a really good picture of what that looks like. Before the modules became so advanced, they did it more like this. All right. At this point, we was in class, we'd ask for questions, right? Instead, I'm just going to take a drink of water.